The United States of America, a wonderful country. We say this now as if it were always this way, but it wasn't. Back in 1773, nobody had even thought of the United States of America. The 13 colonies were under British rule, and all they knew was that they were unhappy. They ended up fighting for the independence of a country we call home. But how? Why? How did it start? Welcome to Channel 6 History News, and here's your answer. The Boston Tea Party. It was the first major rebellion that inspired the fight for an independent nation. On May 10, 1773, the Tea Act is passed. The Tea Act taxed tea, the most popular beverage of the 13 colonies. This is what would inspire the Boston Tea Party. The day is now November 29, 1773. Samuel Adams had called a mass meeting today at Faneuil Hall. There was a crowd, 1,000 people I assume, such a crowd that the meeting could not proceed until a quieter, more secret place was found. The meeting was moved to Old South Meeting House, where Adams made it clear the Dartmouth, a British ship that had the cargo of tea, our beloved tea that shan't be taxed, must unload and pay its duties within 20 days, or the cargo could be confiscated. We passed a resolution. It urged the captain of the Dartmouth to send the ship back without paying for its cargo, while Adams appointed 25 of our men to make sure the cargo was not unloaded. Governor Hutchinson declined the resolution and refused the tea to leave the port unpaid for. How? Oh, how will we continue with this? December 16th, 1773. Today is the last day for the duties to be paid for. Governor Hutchinson still refuses for the ship to leave the port with its unpaid cargo. I must get ready for the rebellion. There will be around 100 members of the Sons of Liberty. We may be charged for treason. I must leave for Griffin's Wharf. That night was a rebellious one. About 100 members of the Sons of Liberty boarded the Dartmouth, the Eleanor, and the Beaver at around 7 o'clock. They struck open 342 chests of tea and threw their contents into the water. The tea party itself lasted about 3 hours. Little did they know that the effects would last for much longer. What a night! We executed the rebellion wonderfully, as almost none were arrested. I did gain a few splinters and many scrapes from the chests of tea of the Eleanor. No chest of tea remains unbroken. None of our men were injured and none of theirs. The looks of pure surprise from the crew confirmed that they had not expected this type of act. Now one can only wait and watch. The Sons of Liberty were pleased with the rebellion. The next morning, the colonists of Boston awoke to an unpleasant surprise. The entire harbor reeked of tea. They closed the port due to the smell a couple days after the tea party. What a pleasant morning with an unpleasant smell. The tea smells terrible, so terrible that we have to close down the port. I assume the king has not yet been informed of our act of rebellion. I wonder what events lie ahead. When the king was eventually informed of the rebellious act, he wasn't mad. He was outraged. He immediately knew that if the colonists of Boston remained unpunished, then other colonies would follow in their footsteps. He wanted to punish not only the Sons of Liberty, but all of Boston in such a way that nobody would ever think of rebelling again. He thought of the Coercive Acts. The Coercive Acts were 4 laws that pushed the colonies one step further into declaring independence. In 1774, Britain passed the Coercive Acts. As the colonists were informed of these new acts, they formed a better name for them, the Intolerable Acts. They consisted of the Boston Port Act, the Massachusetts Government Act, the Quartering Act, and the Administration of Justice Act. This is outrageous! I cannot believe His Majesty has done such a dishonorable thing. Punishing us like this? The Boston Port Act officially closes our port until we pay for the tea. The Massachusetts Government Act replaces our government, a thing that is to be rightfully ours, but is now under British power. The Quartering Act, what a complete invasion of our privacy. And the Administration of Justice Act, which states that we as witnesses of a crime must pay for a passage across the Atlantic for the trial of a British officer that will inevitably rule against our will. The massacre's trial was fair. I do not know how much longer we can take these acts of horror. The colonists were outraged with His Majesty's decision to punish Boston like this. The Sons of Liberty had expected a response, but not one like this. The rest of Boston, who had not participated in the Tea Party, were furious to an even higher extent than the Sons of Liberty. They were mad because they were being punished for something that they hadn't been a part of. The colonists grew mad. The first act was the Administration of Government Act. This act stated that a British officer's trial must be held in England. If any colonist is a witness, they must pay for their own passage across the Atlantic. The colonists were mad because if a British soldier was correctly accused, in England it was definite that he would be found not guilty. As if that weren't bad enough, if a colonist was a witness to a British soldier's wrongdoing, they had to pay for their own way to England just to watch the soldier be found not guilty. The second act was the Boston Port Act. This act made it clear that the port was to remain closed until all tea was paid for. The third act was the Quartering Act, which upset the colonists very much. The Quartering Act stated that any British officer or soldier had the right to come and stay at your house as they pleased, and you would have to fold their expenses of food, water, clothing, and whatever else they may need. This upset the colonists because it was a complete invasion of privacy, and the colonists did not want to spend their hard-earned money on a British soldier. The fourth act was the Massachusetts Government Act. This act stated that the Massachusetts government was now under British power. It limited town hall meetings. This outraged colonists because their government was rightfully theirs, and now with it under British control, who knew what decisions they would make? The Intolerable Acts completely made every single one of the colonists outraged. Life has gotten much harder since the Intolerable Acts were passed. We are planning to unite against His Majesty, King George III, as he is careless toward our people. He has no regard toward the colonies. We cannot bear this anymore, and we will not remain hushed. In fact, the colonists did not remain hushed. They sparked a rebellion just a year later. On April 19, 1775, the first shots were fired at Lexington and Concord. These shots would lead to the Revolutionary War, the Declaration of Independence, and newfound independence of a country we call home, the United States of America. Imagine what would have happened if the members of the Sons of Liberty had not exchanged their thoughts with England the night of the Boston Tea Party, and taken action against what they thought was wrong. Imagine what would have happened if England had not explored their boundaries with the Intolerable Acts. The Boston Tea Party started a chain reaction of events that led to an independent nation. If the Boston Tea Party and the Coercive Acts had not occurred in history, then life today would have not been the same. The Boston Tea Party and the Intolerable Acts were a very significant event in history that made a lasting impact for generations to come. This is Channel 6 History News, signing off.
All right, thank you.